Today we are living in a borderless world where you can work from anywhere for anywhere, anyone across the world. What is very interesting to see is the departure from the 9 to 5 usual work. The departure from where permanency or the job security was given more importance. Your generation, or although your parents started this process, you know, the millennials or your parents started this process, and you guys are going to take it to the next level. One more point that I wanted to make, we often talk about, parents talk about it, teachers talk about it, your neighbors talk about passion. For some of you who feel very strongly about environment, hunger as an issue, you can probably look at this field as an area to find passion to work in, right? And there are a range of jobs that are available, right from technologists to agriculturists, whether it is clean energy, whether it's farming, reforestation, reversing, or slowing down the climate change. These are all possibilities. If you're looking at public policy, legal studies, you can play a very, very important role. Let me take a quick minute and help you introduce myself. My name is Arun Mittal, and I'm your career counselor today. Like many of you in this room, I too have had my own share of challenges finding my way through school. I did schooling from I went to 7 different schools. And before you start making assumptions and think that I've been shunted from 6 of them, let me tell you, it's largely because of my father's job, which took me to places. And that is how I would say that I had the pleasure of being in so many schools. As a son of an army officer, I've had my own share of privileges and challenges, if I could say. I studied in a government school. Many of you would find it, equally weird. I studied physics, chemistry, mathematics, and biology in my class 11. As an average student, and I'm sure this is something which is a trend which has continued. My parents also felt that I would need more options to be successful. The whole null hypothesis that if you have more options to choose from, your likelihood of being successful is higher. So I appeared for both medical and engineering exams. And it was assumed, if I'm taking both, I'll be able to crack at least one of them. As you can guess, I did my graduation in commerce from a relatively unknown college of Delhi University. I started working at the age of 20 and went back to complete my or do my management education from Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta, when I was 28. So that's when I went back to school, after having left at around 2021. I started, for those who are getting a little worried about how did I start at 20, I started to work in my final year of graduation. So that's how, 20, right? Currently, I have 2 jobs. And I wanted to sit and we'll connect a lot of what I am doing and probably, what I'm going to talk about. So I have 2 jobs. I work at Riyadh Pro. And in addition to that, I also work as an executive administrator at Asia Pacific Career Development Association. So I continue to work in the field, different, and you'll find I'm using the word gig somewhere later in my presentation, right? But having heard the way my growth or my career trajectory moved, I'm sure all of you can understand and relate that it's normal to goof up and still do well. And I think what we are going to do today in today's session is understand how career planning needs to evolve with time and why it is pertinent more than ever before. Is that okay? Are you all with me? No, Ryan, I am, while geographies don't matter in my mind anymore, no, I am based in Delhi. Thank you so much. Okay. As I move, uh, you know, career and life are intertwined. Your work is a very important constituent of your life, and hence it is very important that you have high levels of satisfaction in whatever you do. And that is the reason why we will try and understand in this session why and how is the world of work evolving. World of work is a phrase that I'm using for industry, for companies, for how the whole environment, the job world works, right? That is what when we say world of work means, and it kind of encapsulates the entire industry. This is important for you to understand because what is relevant today or what is highly relevant yesterday might become obsolete in the future. While I come from we have a generational gap, but I'm sure the Gen Zs in this room have heard of Nokia. From being the market leader or the who's who of the telecom industry to a almost non-existential operator today. If you speak to your parents, they'll tell you how typewriters and typists used to be in rage at some point in their early in their careers. Or for that matter, let's look at the evolution of telephone to the mobile. Often we talk about it with our kids, right? These are classic examples that you need to understand that the world is evolving and it's evolving very fast. What is relevant today, what is important today, is not necessarily a formula for the future as well. We will also try and understand if skills is the only important thing, or if formal education is as important as before. We will also in this session understand how each one of you can prepare yourself for the future and stay relevant. I am not too sure, given the paucity of time, but if time permits, we will look at some of the futuristic careers that you can explore, evaluate. But I also, you guys are irrespective whether you're a class 9th grader or someone in class 12. I want you to remember and understand that it's not necessity that you have to choose a particular career to be successful. I am not saying that you do not need to have a plan. What I'm stating is it is not necessary for each one of you in this room to have a particular career and only then you will be successful. Some of you will still continue to be on an exploratory phase for the next couple of years. Some of you will be able to decide early. And in neither of these two, there is anything wrong. If Ashwath will talk about it. We'll talk about what are the challenges or opportunities uh, in very briefly though, right? I think this question will be very relevant for Rupesh when he comes in the next session, but we will talk about some of the factors that I think are important. And
Today, I wish life was simpler than what it is today or would be in the future. Technical advancements, rampant abuse of the environment, businesses attempting to maximize their profits, and the changing preferences of individuals across geographies, and that includes the Gen Z, which is you, right, has made the world of work a lot complex or complicated, if I could say, right? And we will try and unravel. When I say complex and complicated, please do not construe that as something negative. The whole evolution is change is the only constant, right? As we say, now this is evolution. Some of it could be desired, a lot of others could not be. For example, the chaos that we see around climate change today, the rising water level of our oceans, right? But coming back, today we are living in a borderless world where you can work from anywhere, for anywhere, anyone across the world. What is very interesting to see is the departure from the 9 to 5 usual work. The departure from where permanency or the job security was given more importance. Your generation, or although your parents started this process, the millennials, as or your parents started this process, and you guys are going to take it to the next level. And we'll talk about this shift from the usual job security and all a little later in this session, right? Also, pandemics like COVID cannot be termed as history. They might have caught the whole world as surprised. We might not have seen something similar. COVID has changed many things across organizations permanently. The job landscape has also evolved significantly. Today we are also talking about a lot about mental health than we were doing pre-COVID. While some of them might sense to you, might make less sense to you, but trust me, the impact of each one of them on the future of work, on the type of work that we will do, is significant. I just want to get a clue from you. If I'm going too fast, too slow, please let me know. Okay, so Gautam says it's a good speed. Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is good. Now, coming to the next very significant change that we are seeing in the macroeconomic environment, where there are massive changes on account of automation, personalization. Many people would need to upskill, and also a range of new jobs will be created. I want you to understand this very, very carefully, that none of you have to worry about lack of jobs. You will certainly need to understand that jobs would be different. Often the world gets worried every time we talk about the next industrial revolution. However, this fear that each time the industrial revolution happens, we move closer to automation, industrialization, the jobs are cut. That's absolutely bizarre. We have seen it 3 times before. It is just that the jobs change. Some job roles become irrelevant, but a lot of other jobs are created in the process. What started in early 80s is today a buzzword. When I was growing up, I had not heard of it. But more and more of you are trying their hard, you're trying your hand at entrepreneurship, startups, as you call it, right? I want you to recognize that it is important that a new set of skills will need to be gained by you guys. So when you're looking at this shift into, venturing into entrepreneurship, new sets of jobs, what it is essentially implying is you will need to stay relevant, which means you'll have to have the right skills for it, right? And this is more than evident if you look at the successive reports by everyone's is in Davos these days, right? At the World Economic Forum, and successive reports of the World Economic Forum and many others indicate that skills being demanded by the industry are changing and will continue to change. And what we're trying to show you is essentially, right, Vixit? What we're trying to show you is what was relevant. If in the 70s writing was important, it is not the top skill anymore. The demand for soft skills and certain foundational skills is now preferred over hard skills. Today, empathy and resilience could be a most sought after skill at any workplace. So they are more in demand than pure hard skills. Now the question for schools and parents in this room, and I'm sure I see some of them being there, right? Is how are we making our children more empathetic and resilient? Our research indicates that over 80% of the students have low scores in achievement orientation, which essentially means that even if our kids are scholastically very good, they might not be ready to take a plunge in a very competitive environment. For example, the most in-demand skill, teamwork, requires a high proficiency in collaboration, conflict management, resilience, for example. And these are all trainable areas. What we will have to look at as parents, as a support system for our children, whether we are an educator or a parent, is how are we developing these skills along with the regular school education, right? That takes me to the second relevant question here, which is what's happening is there a significant change in education? And what I often find is people talking about, both young and old, right? Talk about skills education has replaced regular education. Education per se is not relevant. I'm afraid that most of us are missing the point completely. I understand that many of these traditional courses and degrees have become irrelevant, but that should not be implied as a failure of education as a whole. Organizations, yes, are looking at first day, first hour productive employees, That essentially means that the theory needs to marry the hands-on practice, and we need to build these foundational skills alongside. Gaining these skills or building a temperament for such skills is actually easier at school. So this is also to, when I'm saying this, I'm not speaking to the parents in the school, I'm also saying to the student that you will need to look at, if entrepreneurship, for example, is something that you are very keen on, is you will need to know what are the skills that you're developing. And it's much easier. You get a much easier platform at school, right? Technological and scientific advancements have also created multidisciplinary fields. And here be very careful, which actually have given the next or been a major force for growth. And these are from a range, from traditional agriculture to design. So, for example, I hear often people talking about a very important element of design, which is UI and UX. How many of you understand that UI UX is actually most of the path-breaking work has been done by those in the field of psychology and not what commonly you believe as those coming in from design? Similarly, for some of you who are looking at getting into data science, you need to understand that you have to be proficient in mathematics, technology, and economics. However, the common assumption is that it is a branch of engineering. Net, what I'm trying to say is we need to understand that while your grandparents were able to thrive by going to school once, it is almost given. Almost is also a very redundant word here. It is given that you have to embrace skilling, reskilling, or retro-skilling as part of your life. And that is what I mean when I say lifelong learner, right? I'm going to rush on some of these, right? But when people talk about global warming, it's to me the most critical problem at hand. So much so that it is actually raising an existential crisis. And hence, you will see it is a priority for the developed countries. While it should be a priority all across the globe, but there are economic reasons why the buck will keep passing on. But what I want you to recognize is because of this complexity or this problem or the size of this problem, the demand for ESG professionals is far, far, far more. In fact, it is an emerging field. Today, we have far lesser people who are trained to work in this field. And it is not just people who are looking at sustainability and others. It is also, important. And I think that is the reason why I said green careers is something that all of you should come back and listen to. Because you'll get to understand the kind of new age jobs are emerging from that field and so much and such, right? One more point that I wanted to make, we often talk about, parents talk about it, teachers talk about it, your neighbors talk about passion. For some of you who feel very strongly about environment, hunger as an issue, you can probably look at this field as an area to find passion to work in, right? And there are a range of jobs that are available, right from technologist to agriculturist. Whether it is clean energy, whether it's farming, reforestation, reversing, or slowing down the climate change, these are all possibilities. If you're looking at public policy, legal studies, you can play a very, very important role. Look at what the National Green Tribunal is trying to do. Look at kind of work that is happening in terms of moving towards cleaner fuel, right? All of that. What essentially we are moving to the next segment, which is saying, so what now? Embrace change. Acknowledge that world around you is evolving, is changing fast. Technology is at the center of it. While each one of you need not be an inventor or an innovator in terms of technology, but each one of you will need to embrace technology into your regular work. What is also very pertinent, very important is you guys need to understand that early movers in any career could pose some risk, but the returns are also higher. So do not assume that you have to walk the path which has been walked a zillion times. Sometimes, in early 80s, late 80s rather, when India was seeing its IT revolution, people who joined in that early rose to the pinnacle, became the CTOs, the chief technology officers, much before their other colleagues could. So it's always it's often good to be an early adopter. And yes, you know, entrepreneurship is real. Whether you become an entrepreneur or an intra-entrepreneur, build on some of those skills. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And why do you need to do that? Because careers come with an expiry date. Gone are the days where you can be in one job doing the same stuff for the next 30 odd years or 35 years of your work life. What is certain is, if your job becomes monotonous, if it becomes less, it requires less intellect, it will be automated. When my and I keep drawing this analogy, when my dad started working, the criteria of success was to stay in the job for the longest possible and to retire from there. My generation changed it completely. You guys are going to take it to the very, very next level, where I'll talk about briefly about gig economy, gig workers. But what is certain is what is going to be relevant? Technology experts, whether you are designing, inventing, developer, or an expert user of it. As a teacher who's helping you, teachers who are helping their students to understand, adopt technology, who embrace as part of their teaching, and those who are helping these hardwares and stay up through repairs and others would continue to be. Artists would continue to be in demand. Deep fake, no deep fake, however, intelligence, artificial intelligence creating, those are the ability of a human to express and capture the emotion is will keep moving up, right? So artists of different forms, whether you are a graphic designer, fine art, sculptor, trust you me, you're going to remain relevant. Services, human services, teachers, managers, healthcare, hospitality, will continue to remain relevant, right? This is what I was hinting at when I was talking some time back. Give me 1 second. Okay, so Rupesh, trust me, I will take 2 minutes. Kids are super keen on understanding about entrepreneurship. So Himika, wait for Rupesh to start, and I will wrap it up in the next 3 minutes. Uh, I was talking about this departure from a 9 to 5. So many of you are or most of you would are today looking at a very different, uh, your need for excitement, risk taking, ability of risk taking is allowing you to do multiple jobs. And what is more critical or crucial for you is the happiness index. So what probably so there is nothing called one shoe fit all, Azan. There is nothing that is universally true. What will work for you might not work for me. What will work for you and me will not work for many others. But what is very clear, both because of the supplier and the demand side, are both preferring to have temporary workers, people who will work on projects, people who will work on tasks and build, right? That would also mean that then you're looking at something when some of you are looking at this, and to me, this is also a form of entrepreneurship. What is seen as, this is gig is not necessarily only freelancing, but it's a form where you work on a project to project. And what many of you would probably be doing is, I was speaking to someone yesterday, you could be a software developer or a data scientist in the day and a chef in the evening, because you have multiple passions, you have multiple interests, right? uh, I am leaving this both for this essentially for Rupesh to chip in. My closing notes. Uh, so I jumped a couple. Okay. So this is I'm leaving for Rupesh to come in, Mr. Sinha to talk about. My last few closing notes for you guys is, alongside your scholastic, please focus on skill building. The examples that I was taking of, whether it is data science or design, you'll have to look at multidisciplinary education. Be a risk taker, learn. A risk taker is not necessarily a punter. It's about, yes, if it's around entrepreneurship, I'm sure, Mr. Sinha would be happy to answer those questions. It's 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 more about knowing what you are getting into, but being open to the idea of risk. And that is in many forms is what I would say is a growth mindset, which says I'm open for, I understand change is something which is there, which is good. And within a certain construct, I can experiment, I can take risk,